Hi, my name is Amanda. I was diagnosed with stage 4 ALK-positive lung cancer when I was 10 days postpartum 2 years ago. Amanda, prior to diagnosis, was a single girl living in her bachelorette apartment with her dog. I was a runner. I worked out. I lived my best life all the time. That was just, I had a really big thing happen with me when I was in my early 30s, and I decided to overcome. I had panic attacks, and I decided that I had to overcome my panic attacks because I needed to live my best life. And Lord, let me tell you, I lived my best life. And then the big transition of diagnosis and life change happened because in February of 2022, I surprisingly got pregnant by my then boyfriend. And it turned out to be twins. And then during my pregnancy, we moved in together. We blended a family because he had a son already from his first marriage. So I became a stepmom. My first experience with any symptoms was in November of 2021. So that was 11 months before my diagnosis. And it was a breathing episode that I had overnight. And we still to this day aren't very sure what it was related to because it just felt like it felt like all of a sudden I couldn't breathe. But I went in and it lasted for about 20 seconds and it was very scary. And I went to my doctor, my primary care doctor, and they did a chest x-ray and a breathing test and everything came back fine. And she said to me, you're 35, we can do more diagnostic testing, but the truth is it was probably just some crazy fluke that happened. And, if you want to do more testing, we can do more testing. And if you don't, then oh, well, you're 35, it was probably just a fluke. And I really did just let it go because, a couple months later, I ended up surprisingly pregnant and now I had a new health issue that I needed to deal with. And, I was 35, so I was considered a geriatric pregnancy, and then it was spontaneous twins. So it was a whole thing. The pregnancy was physically the hardest thing. It was I was nauseous for the first 4 months. Everything was just hard. Every day felt like I needed to rally to do stuff. And I did. I rallied to do stuff. I worked out every day of my pregnancy because I kept thinking that if I work out, things are going to get easier. So I was doing my Peloton bike. I was doing Pilates until I was 8 months pregnant. I was doing weightlifting for as long as I possibly could. I had no energy left. My heart rate was high all the time. And then somewhere in my pregnancy, I developed a cough, and the cough is what I know is a definitive, it wasn't pregnancy, it was lung cancer because the cough didn't go. They told all the doctors were like, don't worry, the cough will go away when you deliver the babies. Your heart rate's going to go down when you deliver the babies. Everything was said to me, oh, it's because you're pregnant. It's because you're pregnant. You're uncomfortable because you're pregnant. You're having a hard time. Your energy is because you're pregnant. The cough is because you're pregnant. Everything was just because I was pregnant. Then I delivered the babies and the cough didn't go away, except for when you combine that cough with a C-section incision, you're like, someone needs to fix this here. So that led me to my diagnosis because then I ended up in the emergency room with the cough. So the only real symptom that I know that I had was the cough. And I did have a breathing episode 11 months prior that had we done any further diagnostics, it might have ended up finding something. But for me, I don't ever, I think about that and I'm like, yeah, but if I had found it then, it might have been at an earlier stage, but I would have been in cancer treatment and I wouldn't have gotten pregnant. So for me, it's a Sophie's Choice type situation. And for me, it will always be, if I get a diagnosis that's at a further stage and as of medicine right now, it's non-curable. If I had to do that in order to have my boys, then I'm okay with that. I go to the emergency room. I have 5-day-old twins. I think that I delivered them on a Monday. I was released from the hospital on Wednesday. I'm in the emergency room on Saturday. I have no idea what I'm doing. It feels impossible. And I'm coughing nonstop and I still feel like I'm so grateful to not be pregnant anymore, because a lot of the feelings that I had were related to this. The pregnancy was so hard on me. So I'm so grateful to not be pregnant, but I'm basically completely falling apart, like every part of me. And so I just say to my husband, who wasn't my husband at the time, he was my fiance. Mind you, at this point, I've been with this man for like, let's see, the babies were born in October. We've known each other for a year and a half. Okay. So it's like, we're not comfortable with each other. Like, now that we've been together for 3.5 years, I can say like, no, that wasn't us. We didn't know each other. We had never lived together. So I say to this man who's like the father of my children, who's trying so hard to be supportive of me, and I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea what's going on. My body is falling apart. I'm like, we have to go to the emergency room. So we go to the emergency room and they do a chest x-ray to figure out what's going on with the cough, and they find a pleural effusion. So they send me in for a chest x-ray. They find fluid in my lung. And then the pulmonologist comes in and goes, you're not hallucinating. The heaviness that you're feeling on your chest, there is fluid in your lung. Once again, another person to tell me, you're so young, this is probably a fluke. Like, we don't know what this is, but we'll send it to pathology. So me, my twins, my fiance, my engorged breasts, my C-section incision, the baby's in tow, and I'm getting a lung tap, and they're draining out a liter of fluid in my lungs. And I think that the pulmonologist, once he drained the fluid, could see the coloring in it. And so he sent me in for a CT. And then everything just like started progressing from there. On Wednesday, the doctor calls me and says, we're starting to get the pathology back. There's some cells of concern. That was his exact words. And I'm like, and I remember saying to him, is it possible that this is going to be cancer? And he said, yes. And I said to myself, there's no way this can be cancer. Like, there's just no way. Like, I really, like, it's one of those things that people just tell themselves all the time. Like, there's just no possible way that this could be this. And then the next day he called and said, all right, it is. And I said to him, at that point I had the lung tap was on my left side because that was where the fluid was. And my right clavicle, lymph node was swollen to the point that I could feel it. And I said, I'm going to be diagnosed stage 4, aren't I? And he said, yes. The fluid is already considered a metastasis. The lymph node crossover is going to be like, yeah, you're going to be diagnosed stage 4. It just seemed impossible. Like, it was just, there's just no way. I'm a runner. Like, I worked out until I was 8 months pregnant with twins. It was an impulse. I was 35. Like, or 36 at the time of diagnosis. There was no way this was cancer. Especially when you also just look at the circumstances of your own life and you think to yourself, like, there's no way in which God gives me, like, I finally get this life that I was 30 and I decided I needed to overcome my panic attacks because I was going to live to be 90, and I couldn't allow my panic attacks to dictate my life the way that they had for the previous 15 years. So I go off and have this amazing life. And then I come to a point and I'm like 35 and I'm like, all right, I think that I like really want to like fulfill this next part of my life. I want to get married. I want to have children. I'm ready to like go. I've maxed out the level of, independent fun that I can have. And then I get spontaneously pregnant by a guy that I swear to you, I manifested this man. And there's just no way that I could have cancer when I finally get all of the things that I have wanted in life. Like, there's just no way. And it's like, yeah, you have cancer. And I'm like, oh my God, this is, how does this happen to me? All I knew was that I had lung cancer. I knew nothing about how anything worked. And, because why would I? I'm 36. Like, I don't know people with lung cancer. Anyone that has had lung cancer is an older person who smoked for 40 years. Then on Monday, I went to the oncologist, and she was where things turned around for me. She said she was the first person to have any optimism. And I didn't know how lung cancer was treated other than chemo, radiation, surgery. Like, that was my only understanding of how anything would work. And my expectation was in my state that I was going to need to somehow pull it together to go through chemo. And she said, I have a very strong feeling that you're going to have a genetic mutation, which I had no idea what that even meant. But she said, if you have a mutation, we get to give you a different type of treatment. You're going to get targeted treatment, and it's going to go after what your cancer's driver. And, oh man, I was just so hopeful at that point that I was going to have a mutation. My pulmonologist calls me and says, there was a hit on the biomarker testing, you're ALK-positive. By that point, I had already gone searching online, because no one listens to anyone when they say don't Google search. I was like, lung cancer for young people, and I somehow ended up on an Instagram page for ALK-positive. And I didn't even know that was a thing. And the person that I started talking to, I was just like, whoever it is that answers, that holds this Instagram account, will find me. And it turned out to be someone who I now call my friend, Summer. And Summer, I remember calling her and saying, my biomarker testing came back, I'm ALK-positive. And then we both were so excited that we got to be like alkies together. Hope is the only way that I know how to be. I'm a glass half full optimist all the time. And I try to find a good balance between the hope of science and medicine and the reality of my situation, because the last thing that I want is to be caught off guard. And then I've known people who have died and were dying from cancer and weren't in acceptance of it. And because of that, they didn't get to say goodbye to people. And then I've seen the alternative of people being in acceptance of it. And when they're in acceptance of it, you get a real, genuine opportunity to say goodbye and leave behind stuff and make sure that you're, that you get to say everything, that nothing is left unsaid. And so for me, I need to find the balance between the two. And I think I don't want to say it's my ongoing struggle, but I think that science, I do have a very strong feeling. I mean, just look at where we are today. I take a medicine. I have stage 4 lung cancer. I have lived with stage 4 lung cancer for 2 years. I take 8 pills a day. Everyone around me forgets that I have lung cancer. No one treats me like any differently until you tell them what's up. A lot of it is just acceptance and grace. And then I think that giving yourself some time to be sad is okay. But I think allowing the sadness to control your life is where you really end up. You need to you got to pull yourself up. You have to. There's just no point not to. You only get one life to live. If you want to spend a day in bed being sad, go spend a day in bed being sad. You want to spend a week in bed being sad? You need to get up. You need to go have some ice cream, go for a walk outside, and find some happiness somewhere. Your only prerequisite for getting lung cancer is having lungs. That's really all it is. I did smoke, which it's unfortunate that you have to like say that as like, no one's asking like, if you get colon cancer, no one's like, well, do you poop? It's like, no one, like, you don't have to say these things. So it's like, I did smoke, so I don't get to say I was a never smoker, but I had reached October of 2022. When I got diagnosed, it was 10 years since I had quit smoking, and I was only 35. So I smoked on and off for 10 years in my 20s, and I had quit before I was 30. But the amount of people that I know that are never smokers that have lung cancer is astronomical. Like, I know so many people with lung cancer who were never smokers, and I myself, my smoking had nothing to do with me getting lung cancer. And I was also pushed outside of the lung cancer screening guidelines because of my age and because of my overall general health. I was a runner. I was doing half marathons. I wasn't no one was concerned about me having lung cancer. The first thing that I would want people to know about lung cancer is that your only prerequisite for getting lung cancer is having lungs. You don't need to smoke. It doesn't matter how active you are, how healthy you are. If you have lungs, you can get lung cancer. And the second part is how incredible science is in the lung cancer sphere right now. And the amount of research going on in lung cancer is amazing and hopeful and incredible.